Welcome, everybody, to the Spotlight by VeteranCrowd. I'm very pleased today to have as my guest Ryan Hogan. Ryan's a Navy surface warfare officer veteran and the CEO of Hunt a Killer, a subscription based company, box selling company right now that's growing by leaps and bounds. He lives in Seattle. And Ryan, welcome to the program. It's great to have you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Bob.
Hey, before we start, I always like to dig in, Ryan, with a little bit of background. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how did you wind up in the Navy?
Yeah, that's a long story, but born and raised in Bel Air, Maryland. Eventually moved to Owings Mills, Maryland, and finished out high school. But I was a lost soul. I was someone that was certainly looking for direction. Certainly someone that needed some discipline. Thought I had everything life figured out at that point. But quickly realized that I didn't. And I really found an opportunity to get away, and an opportunity to serve, and really learn what it meant to be a leader, and really just kind of get my life straight. And that's what the U.S. Navy did for me. I enlisted in 2002 as a naval air crewman, and really kind of found my way over the first couple of years.
Did you train at Pensacola?
I did. So I started in Chicago with boot camp, and then went down to Pensacola for first it was air crew school. So you go through the helo dunker and all those cool things for 4 weeks, and then went and learned my actual rating before heading to the squadron.
So that's fantastic. We'll have to go down sometime and celebrate at Floribama one evening. I think we should. That's by far one of my all-time favorite nighttime establishments. So you transitioned and commissioned at some point.
Yeah, so the Navy has a program called Seaman to Admiral, Stay 21, and I had been submitting applications for the Seaman to Admiral program for about 3 years, and every year getting rejected. And that was another part of learning for me. My high school grades, the initial part of my military career, none of these things were the best, and it really took a lot of hustle to make up ground, and catch up to where I should have been. And so eventually got selected to the Seaman to Admiral program. Went through 3 years at University of Maryland. Was at the George Washington University NROTC unit, so kind of that crosstown affiliate,
All right.
and then got my commissioning in 2013.
Wow, I'll tell you what. So you've been in the Navy a long time. Now you went into the reserves. Are you still doing reserve duty, or are you done?
Yeah, so I'm still doing reserves. I separated from my calling has always been entrepreneurship. It's always been
Oh, we're going to
just
get into that.
creating.
I know you're right about that.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. And so I'm one of the crazy ones that separated from active service after 15 years.
Mm.
I got so much out of the military, and I continue to want to give back. So I'm still in the reserves today. Today, I think I've got 18 years in. 15 of those active, 4 of those or 3 of those reserves, but still serving today, and it's been an incredible journey.
Hang in there for 20. That's for sure. Don't quit now.
Yeah.
So you and I met in Chapel Hill at a Patriot Boot Camp event. We were talking before the show. It seems like 2015 seems like decades ago at this point in time for all of the things you've done. You had a business called Polaris at that point in time. But I want to hear about the interesting fact you had a business called Run for Your Lives, which was a zombie infested 5K obstacle course. Now, I know that people want to hear about that.
Yeah. And looking back at 2010, my co-founder and I, business partner Derek Smith, who is the same co-founder in Hunt a Killer, we saw this. It's a long story. There was a whole nother company, and the whole reason that Run for Your Lives was ever founded was because of a company called Warwear, which Warwear was an athletic apparel company for military personnel. And it was just one of these great ideas. If you build it, they will come. Quickly learned that nobody comes if it's not a good value proposition, and we did not have that. And so I had all this inventory in my garage, and we saw that obstacle races back in 2010 were taking off. And so I called my buddy up who was living in Ocean City, Maryland, trying to figure out what he's doing in life. And I said, I've got $120,000 of apparel sitting in a warehouse that is going nowhere. The company's out of money. We have no way to market this. what if we started an adventure race, and then I can move my athletic apparel inventory as like the free T-shirts that come with every race registration? And he was like, okay, let's do it. So we wound up creating Run for Your Lives, which was the first ever zombie-infested 5K obstacle course race. And so when you think about 2010, you think about Tough Mudders, you think about Spartan Race, you think about Warrior Dash. And the reality is that when we entered the market, we brought something fresh and something new. And so our participants came to our events and they donned a flag football belt that has 3 belts or 3 flags on it. And
Right.
those flags were representations of your life. And there were 200 zombies on the course at any given time, and they were chasing you through the obstacles, and everything was thematic. What Derek and I were trying to accomplish, and this is very much from SEER school days of survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, kind of getting rolled up and being a prisoner of war, is how do we break reality? The military does an amazing job in SEER school breaking reality. Like,
Hmm.
how can we bring that type of I don't know, escapism or immersion into a live event? And so that was really the history of Run for Your Lives. It grew fast, and it collapsed even faster.
Oh goodness! Well, it sounds like it would have been a lot of fun. So Hunt a Killer starts with an event, also, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so you brought up Polaris, and so there's a
Oh,
leap over like 5 other companies between Run for Your Lives and Hunt a Killer. But I had a mentor come to me, and he was like, "Why are you messing with this SaaS, this technology stuff in Polaris when you have no idea what you're doing? Like, your background is in live events. Like, you know what you're doing there. Why don't you get back into live events?" And I thought that was a great idea. So I called my old co-founder, who thankfully was not too upset with me at that time. And I said, why don't we do this again? And why don't we do it right this time? And why don't we use the lessons learned from Run for Your Lives and apply them to Hunt a Killer? And so you're absolutely right. Hunt a Killer was its first iteration was a live event. We transformed a 200-acre campground into a living crime scene, and we brought 600 participants down to experience it.
and so, but then it transitions, right? Like every good business, it has a pivot. So, at what point, did you have the epiphany and begin the transition to the subscription model? And tell people a little bit about how this business is growing.
Yeah, yeah. So we learned very quickly the business just didn't scale. We were 6 months into it, so we launched in late 2015 when we started to think about what the idea was, and October 2016 was the first event. And about halfway through, so maybe summertime of 2016, we realized that the complexity of the game design that was specific for that venue, so we used their cabins, we used their lake, we used the terrain, we used the woods, we used all these different things. And the complexity of that game design for the experience could not scale. We could not just take that um, and take it and refit it for another venue. And then we looked at the money coming in, and I think we made about 60 grand from the first event. And you take out $50,000 in expenses, and Derek and I are looking at each other like a year's worth of work and 5,000 to split. And this isn't a scalable business. This is a good lifestyle business maybe, but not a good scalable business. And so we made the decision of how do we take this product market fit, how do we take this experience and deliver it to doorsteps each month? And 2016, you've got the loot crates, the birch boxes, you've got all of these subscription boxes that are exploding. And we said, well, what if we did that? What if we told a story episodically each month and delivered it right to doorsteps and built this community around it? And so we pivoted the company 2 weeks after the first event. We shipped our first box October 15th of 2016. And by August of 2019, we shipped our millionth box. And so we've been growing very quickly. We've been doubling year over year, almost every year, and it's just a matter of trying
You
to
getting
minimize
close to
mistakes.
2 million boxes now?
We're right around I'd have to pull up the data. I'm sure it's this month or next month.
So here you are, 9 months later, and you're getting ready to double the number of those. That's astounding. Let's talk a little bit about the current environment. I heard you say on an event last week that you think there's no better time right than right now to start an e-commerce business? What's going on, and what's driving that?
Yeah, I mean, we're all seeing in real time brick and mortar retail implode in front of us, and so
A lot of it's
thinking
burning down right now. Yeah,
some of it's even burning
even
down.
right, right.
And it's a matter of thinking about what the future looks like and looking at some of the data coming out. And so, will the Targets survive? Will the Costco survive? Absolutely. There's always going to be a place for retailers like that. But e-commerce has grown 10 years. So 10 years of e-commerce growth has doubled in the past 8 weeks. And is that a sustainable trajectory? I can't make that assessment now. But like, people ordering online, it's nothing new, and people ordering online will only increase. And the barriers to entry to launch an e-commerce store are so low. Like, think about if you're going to open a brick and mortar store, you've got to you got to get a real estate agent, and then you have to negotiate. You have to find a property and negotiate a lease. Then you have to get the build out. Then you have to get the shelving space, and you have to get the point of sale system. Then you've got to get the inventory. Then you've got to do the marketing. Like, there's so much risk and upfront investment that goes along with that. It just doesn't make sense when you can literally today, in 3 hours, you can build a website, build a sales funnel, build a Shopify store, and be selling whatever it is that you are dreaming of, whatever it is that you think the world wants. You can sell, or you can start validating that in less than a day.
It's so important. I mean, number one, in that case, I mean, you got no geographic restrictions as an example. You do bricks and mortar, you're going to draw people from a 15, 20-mile radius, maybe if you're lucky, right? Whereas you can sell literally internationally on day one with your concept. The other thing is, I think absolutely true, is that the acceptance of e-commerce is on the rise because the folks that used Amazon before are using it more, but the folks that had never really stuck their toe in the water have done it now, and they're going, wow, this is pretty easy. This works pretty good. So
Yep.
absolutely important. So I want to drill down. I'm really fascinated by the subscription model business because we're trying to do a lot of that and convert here at VeteranCrowd. And so I want to talk first about customer acquisition and the cost of that. And then I want to understand customer lifetime value and why I think it's so important to be focused on the customer. So let's talk first about customer acquisition cost.
Yeah. So the biggest difference between opening up brick and retail and trying to scale an e-commerce brand is that there is a real tangible cost. You have less organic traffic. So think about organic traffic with brick and mortar. If you open the right store in the right neighborhood, just the foot traffic alone is going to bring people through your front door. That doesn't happen online. You have to get the word out there, and you typically have to pay for your traffic. There are certainly exceptions where some brands have gotten a PR hit, some brands have gotten this massive influencer, and they're just hit the ground running. But those are the exceptions. Those are the ones that we read about and we dream about. That's not the reality. The reality is that if you're going to scale an e-commerce business, you have to understand what your acquisition channels are going to be and what the cost of those acquisition channels are going to be. And so for us with Hunt the Killer, it's always been about we started with Facebook advertising, and Facebook has incredible tools to help you get started. A part of that is Facebook has a lot of data, and a lot of that data says a lot about who you are as a consumer. And so Facebook's algorithms help you spend your advertising dollars to make sure that your message is getting in front of the right individuals. And then the second thing that worked for us, and this is more of a branding play than anything else for most companies, but we use it as a direct response play, which is podcast advertising. And so for us, it's always been about how do we get in front of the exact target audience we're trying to, and it's true crime podcasts, and it's been true crime since day one. We're starting to see a little of that change as we enter mass market, but you have to focus on how much money are you spending. And customer acquisition cost is very easy. You can measure by hour, you can measure by day, you can measure by week, but customer acquisition cost is how much money went out the door in advertising in any given day, and then you divide that by how many customers did you bring in the door. So if you spent $100 in any given day, and you brought in 10 customers, then your customer acquisition cost, your cost to acquire a single customer was $10.
Let's talk about the customer lifetime value and also another factor, which is churn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So those are if you are getting into the subscription box, or any type of subscription business model, the biggest metric that you're trying to change is lifetime value, and lifetime value is very much a lagging indicator of your churn. And so churn is how many customers are leaving. So you have a cohort of 10,000 customers. Out of those 10,000, 1,000 leave in any given month, and you have what would that be, a 10% churn rate. And so you're always trying to monitor that number. And based upon your churn, that backs into your lifetime value. And lifetime value is what is the total, and typically companies use contribution. So you back out the cost of the product. So it's just margin, contribution margin
Right.
alone. And the lifetime value is how much money, how much profit am I bringing in off of each customer? And you're trying to get to a balance of about 1 to 3 of your CAC to LTV ratio. And to put that into terms, let's say that you have a lifetime value of $150. You are trying to get to a customer acquisition cost of $50, and that takes you into this balance. That's mostly just GAAP accounting. That's mostly
Hmm.
just profit accounting, because cash accounting is completely different. And first and foremost, you can't run out of cash. So there's
Right.
different things that you use for that.
The DROOM acronym, I think I mentioned the other day, but DROOM, DROOM, don't run out of money. And if you don't hit that 3-to-1 ratio, you got a real good chance of doing exactly that. Now, the other thing that I think you've done a lot is you've automated a lot of your website and designed it very specifically with techniques to draw people along uh, the sales funnel, if you will, to turn them from a lead into a subscriber. Talk a little bit about the science of that.
Yeah. So, right now, actually probably over the past 5 years, the hot term is sales funnel, and a sales funnel is how a customer, how a prospect navigates through your process. And your process starts with, how do you acquire that traffic? So it may be organic, or two types of traffic, paid and organic. And so it starts at the top of the funnel. That's where the traffic is coming in. And what you're trying to do is bring them through the bottom of the funnel, which is the acquisition point. We like to think about it a little bit differently. We like to think about it more as a sales wheel, because we never stop. We never stop getting in front of the customer. Even if they've made that acquisition, we're constantly thinking about, how do we extend lifetime value? How do we sell more stuff to more great products to the same customers? But the genesis of a sales funnel is that every single there is an action that you're looking for at every single point, and anything outside of that is a distraction. And so I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with somebody that I help coach and mentor, and she is thinking about a testimonial page. And her question was like, is now the right time to build a testimonial page? And my answer to her is, it's never too late to start testimonials, because your website is trying to accomplish two things. It's trying to communicate whatever the value is, through identifying the pain point and saying, this is our solution for that pain point. The second thing your sales funnel and website landing page is trying to do is build that credibility as they come through your sales funnel. And so, but the problem is, you don't want a whole bunch of other areas they can go, right? And you want to make sure that you integrate those things into your process. And so for a website, you're looking for a call to action. For us, for Hunt to Killer, it's, we want you to apply for membership. And so our entire site is set up to get you to apply for membership. And I had the same kind of advice for her there, where it's amazing to build a testimonial page, but you want to build it into your funnel. You don't want to put distractions on your website where they can go outside of what you're actually trying to have them do. So a good example would be, integrate those testimonials into your landing page. If your call to action is getting them to fill out some sort of survey or some sort of application, then make the thank you page of that survey, make that the testimonial. Hey, thank you so much. We'll be in touch shortly. Oh, by the way, these are all the customers and these are all the great things that they've said about us. And so there's ways to accomplish both goals, build that trust and credibility, while also making sure you're not providing a distraction.
So you've got me thinking of another question. I mean, it would have been great, in my opinion, for me to have known all this stuff and planned it all out. But the reality is that maybe you're more about launching it and just learn by doing than you are of coming up with the perfect plan right out of the chute.
100%. I've written the 60-page business plans, and what happens, and this is usually my advice to entrepreneurs, is like we get stuck on this wheel. Like the fun part about entrepreneurship is the ideas. That is not the hard part. And then we get to this place where like getting to the launch is the hard part. That's not even the hard part. Like the hustle and the grind in entrepreneurship starts the minute that you launch. And so you think about the fun part of creating the ideas, and that's all great. You're living in the clouds. And then you think about launching it, and you still have excitement, and you're like, man, I'm really starting to hustle now. That's nothing. That's nothing compared to the hustle that happens the minute that you launch. Because the minute that you launch, like that starts the validation process, and you have to move fast in order to understand where is your value proposition, and making sure that you're communicating that. Because here's what happens when you launch, and I've had this happen a dozen times. You hit the launch button and nothing happens. Nothing. You have no traffic. You have no sales. And you're like, oh my gosh, my idea sucks. Well, no, your idea doesn't suck. You're probably communicating it wrong. Or maybe you're not bringing in the right traffic. Or maybe you've repositioned. Or maybe you need better creative. There's 1,000 things. But yeah, I mean, the hustle starts the minute you press launch.
Let me shift gears on you a little bit. You spent all this time in the military, right? And our audience is military veterans running businesses, trying to start them, trying to be part of the community, right? How do you think that experience has helped you be the better entrepreneur?
Um, so there's two things. There's kind of like there's a pro and there's a con. And the pro is the resilience. Like if there is one trait that an entrepreneur needs, it is resilience. You need to understand that every step of the way, there's going to be adversity. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be struggles. And crazy entrepreneurs live in one of two mindsets. You're either the highest of highs and you're like, we're going to make this, or you're in the lowest of lows and you're like, why did I even start this thing? And there's really not much in between time. You just go right up and you come right back down. It's a constant cycle. And so the military for me was all about resilience, like understanding that it takes work. Like it took me 3 packages to get into the State 21 program. And here's a secret. The year that I got picked up, I was still an alternate. I was an alternate 2 years in a row. And the only reason I got picked up is because someone else dropped out. So if that person didn't drop out, I probably would have gotten out of the Navy, and my life would be
Mm-hmm.
completely different. So that's the pro side, is that resilience from the Navy or from the military. The con side is the planning. And this is a habit I try and break out of a lot of people that I talk to, is that in the military, we plan for plans, have another plan, and then have 3 contingency plans for all 7 of those plans. And like, that's not the reality. You have
It
to get
all goes out
comfortable.
the window the first time steel goes down range.
Right. You have to be uncomfortable, or you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like it's played out well as far as when COVID-19 hit and we saw some serious risks to our business. Josh and I, who I know you're familiar with,
Yep,
Josh,
Josh
a
Holly. Yep.
Marine veteran, and we sprung into action and developed plans upon plans upon plans for everything that could go wrong in that scenario. And so there's certainly a time and a place. And what you're doing is you're balancing that investment into what could potentially happen. It's just a normal risk assessment. If this happens, the company crumples, okay, we need a plan or some sort of contingency for at least that. And so we spent 2 weeks planning and getting backups in place and spending $50,000 on technology that we'll never use. But if we did need it, it would have been the only thing that saved the company at that point. So yeah, a little bit of both there.
So any words of wisdom that you like to share? This is sort of like the open season round right here. Some things that you learned or a lesson that you'd like maybe to give to the 20-year-old Ryan Hogan that if you could go back and talk to yourself.
Yeah, I would say get started sooner. My first, I don't know, 3-4 years of taking entrepreneurship seriously was all about thinking. It was all about building plans, and none of that matters. Like you got to get off the wheel and you got to take action. because the quicker you take action, the quicker you're on to your next concept. We use MVP, minimal viable product, or the lean startup principles in a
Right.
lot of things that we do. And it's all about like you launch it and then you iterate it, because at the end of the day, if you have this brilliant idea and you spend 2 years working on it and then get all these plans together and then you launch it and nobody wants your idea, like you could be 2 years downrange already on your next idea with a $30 million company because you learned a year and 9 months ago that that idea was crap. And so for us, or for me at least personally, it's all about like ideas are a dime a dozen. Take those ideas, test those ideas, launch those ideas, and then move to your next idea if that didn't work. And that would be my advice.
Ryan, I've watched the transition. We met 5 years ago at an event, Patriot Boot Camp, where you were a sponge. You were coming in there trying to get information, and here you are 5 years later. You've learned so much in your journey here as an entrepreneur, and now you're paying it forward. And I really, really appreciate that. This is really some great stuff, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Spotlight with Veteran Crowd. We really appreciate Ryan Hogan, the CEO of Hunt a Killer, for stepping into the into our spotlight today. You can learn more about Hunt a Killer at his website, huntakiller.com. He's on social media. He's got ryanehogan.com and also Ryan E. Hogan on LinkedIn. And we'll even put his email address up there for those of you that want to reach out to Ryan. Ryan, thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me, Bob. Appreciate it.
This will be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and Anchor, and others. And that's a wrap. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.